Good evening. The name of my presentation is Race and Health, a look at societal differences presented by me, Barbara Sweetwine. Summary of works I'm going to be discussing are two documentaries, one called When the Bow Breaks, and the second one is called Becoming American. I'll be discussing two chapters out of a book. The first chapter is called Race, Ethnicity, Socioeconomic Status, and Health. The second chapter is called All Things Equal, Does Race, Ethnicity Affect How Physicians Treat Patients? And my last two works are journals slash articles called uh, Psychological Impact of Anti-Asian Stigma Due to the COVID-19 Pandemic, a call for research, practice, and policy responses. And the last work is called Anti-Asian Violence and U.S. Imperialism. So, when the bow breaks, the problem that's presented in this documentary is the disparity between Black infant health problems and white infant health problems. And the problems that were mainly discussed were preterm births and low birth weight. And the question is, why are Black babies more likely to have low birth weight or have babies that are born earlier than their due date than white babies, even when Black mothers and white mothers have the same socioeconomic status when they are healthy and when they both come from nurturing environments? Like, why are Black babies being born less healthy when they have the same seemingly wonderful environments to grow from? So racism against Black women is seen to have a direct effect on these birth weight disparities. So we're looking at racism as a possible cause. The possible solution that's presented is to conduct more studies to find a reliable evidence-based solution. It's scientifically blurry as to why Black babies suffer more than white babies. Yes, we're looking at race, but the documentary and other works, they're looking for more studies to be done. The next documentary is called Becoming American. And Becoming American, the problem presented in this documentary concerns immigrants from Mexico to the US. The main and most important message coming from this documentary is the fact that first generation immigrants are statistically more healthy than, let's just even say, white families that are socioeconomically in a better position. Like, why are these immigrants coming from a so-called poorer country more healthy than our so-called high status families in the US? And so the question is like, okay, they're coming over here super healthy, but by the time the second generation is born and third generation, that generation becomes just as unhealthy as the rest of the United States population, according to like statistics and stuff. What the documentary explained is that the differences from generation to generation is likely due to the fact that second and third generations become more Americanized. And unfortunately, American is an individualistic culture. And that's a stark difference from that first generation who are very familial. They lean on each other emotionally, economically, and mentally. The solution to the problem of poorer health outcomes in second and third generation immigrants can be combated with the inclusion of their native cultural customs, but I can't remember any exact solutions being stated in that documentary. It was kind of self-explanatory. Like, if you get back to your um, familial type cultures, you might have better health outcomes. Okay, so the next work I'm going to discuss is the first chapter of a book that we were assigned. The chapter is called Race, Ethnicity, Socioeconomic Status, and Health. And the problem in this work is that Black people are having worse outcomes that are not evidenced by biological differences between other ethnicities and races. They're trying to find out, why are Black people having the worst health outcomes, even when socioeconomic status is as good as or better than white socioeconomic status. Let's see. They also talk about Hispanic socioeconomic status and their health. It comes in their health outcomes. They're pretty much in the middle. Um, this reading did not explore solutions. They basically explored just the disparities and the different studies that pointed to the disparities. The following chapter in that book is called All Things Being Equal, Does Race Ethnicity Affect How Physicians Treat Patients? In this chapter, the main problem stated was controversial. So some studies report that health disparities may result from what I like to call belief misplacement, which is basically prejudices, biases, and stereotyping from physicians that are providing healthcare to Black people and other minorities as well. Um, Alternatively, there are also studies that report that there is no finding of belief displacement to the Black community. So that's very a controversial thing. The solution that was mentioned in this chapter was a requirement of change in our national policies. Congress is called to, quote, support data that exists, claiming that belief displacement from physicians to the Black community is an actual possibility. There are studies that support the evidence that physicians are treating Black people with stereotypes and belief displacement. The solution is to support that evidence at the Congress level. Okay, so once that solution was stated, this is what happened next. Congress actually partitioned a yearly health disparity report to accommodate this solution. The thing about that report is, I think it was after the first year, the report dismissed any possibility of physician biases, of any possibility of belief displacement, which caused more controversy to continue because people are like, are physicians actually treating Black people differently or are they not? There's studies that say yes, there's studies that say no. Congress is representing a report that is not even talking about physicians treating Black people differently, even though it's evidenced and incited. So after Congress released that report that didn't have anything to do with physicians' treatment of Black people, let's see. Oh, I think I did that in the wrong order. That's okay. Well, before the report dismissed the possibility of physician biases, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, they amended their objective by saying the elimination not just of the reduction of health disparities, but all minority groups, including African Americans. So they said that first, and then they did the report. However, after that incomplete report was given to the public, proponents of physician bias being a large contributor to the disparities of Black health, they practically leaked the accurate yearly reports. Those reports left out no pertinent information. The fact that these accurate reports were leaked, it caused a widespread wave of additional believers who say, okay, I can see why it's a possibility that physicians are treating Black people differently. It's literally evidence. We have the evidence of it, according to these studies and according to the reports that was talked about in this chapter and the previous chapter. So, due to these leaked accurate reports, the possibility of physician bias is taken more seriously than ever before. The next work, let's see, it's called COVID-19 and Asian Hate. I think that's what it's called. COVID-19 and Asian Hate. That's what we're going to call it. So the problem in this work is that there are so many people that are looking at East Asians racially due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This racial discrimination causes Asians to suffer more than they have to when they either have COVID or when they don't. For instance, if they have COVID, they're dealing with the symptomology of COVID, their health, and then they're also dealing with the mental breakdown of being looked at racially because of Donald Trump calling the virus the China virus. So now the Asians are dealing with depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and many other conditions, in addition to having COVID. And even when they don't have COVID, they still have to deal with it. So it just makes life really much, much harder for them due to, the belief misplacement of the Asians. And so the solution that was stated in this text, quote, is that national leadership needs to speak out against Asian hate. They must directly address anti-Asian harassment and violence and provide targeted health, economic, and social assistance. So the next work, so this first work is just talking about COVID-19 directly affecting the mental health and health disparities of Asian communities. Now, the last work that I'm going to talk about comes from a work called Anti-Asian Violence and U.S. Imperialism. I named this slide Asian Hate as a Long-Term Problem. The problem that exists in this text is based on long-term anti-Asian rhetoric, not just episodic racial discrimination, such as only due to COVID-19 propaganda. This text presents the problem of Asian hate and anti-Asian rhetoric as inherent to United States of America colonialism and the United States of America racial capitalism. They're saying that it's just that being racially discriminated against, especially in the Asian culture, is just basically a part of the threads that string together the American culture, unfortunately, is what this text is saying. They're saying that the solution to this problem of inherent colonialism and racial capitalism is a pathway that includes decolonization and Black liberation to be teamed up together as one package deal. This text is basically saying, like, hey, let's take a look at how America colonizes and specifically how they colonized Asians and Asian dealings. And let's look at how we can decolonize that. And let's put that together with Black liberation because they understand that the Black communities are also being treated unfairly and they want to come together and work together. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So similarities and differences between the works. The similarities of all these works are looking at the lifestyles of others who cause poor health outcomes for minorities and disenfranchised groups. For instance, the lifestyles of white America. It is been evidenced and talked about throughout this presentation that prejudice, biases, stereotypes, inherent colonization, and inherent capitalism, the lifestyle of those ways of thinking and moving around is causing poor health outcomes for minorities. That's the similarities between each and every work that I just talked about. The similarity of the solutions of each and every work that I talked about, like I said, some works did not really talk about a solution. Some of the works were just exploring the problem, but every solution that was talked about called for legislative changes. So they're saying like, hey, we need to take this to the foundation of America, which is Congress and which is legislation. The differences between these two works are small. For instance, the subject of Black health disparities in the readings each have a different purpose. I just recently talked about that. The readings for Black folks, one was exploring the problem, one was talking about what is the possible cause of the problem. Those are the two different chapters. And the first reading explores the disparity and the second explores the solutions. So the same thing happened with the Asian readings. Talked about exploring the problem as an episodic problem. And then we talked about exploring the problem and the solution as a long-term and inherent problem. And the solution the solutions, neither of the solutions contradict. They're all pretty much the same. Let's see. The documentaries in the Black community talked about the decline of immigrant health from the first generation to familial standards. The second and third generations adopting the American individualized culture. Basically, it's saying that, hey, when an immigrant comes from Mexico fresh out of their culture, they're more healthy. But once their children adjust to the American culture, their health begins to decline. And the goal is basically to maintain those positive aspects of their Mexican culture. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. Have a great night.